Welcome to the Dangerous Man Podcast, where we talk about how to become a better man, take responsibility for our mission, create value for others, and the many failures and lessons we've learned along the way. Stay dangerous. What is up, everybody? This is your host, John Kostohris, and I'm joined by special guest, Daniel Gjengdahl. What's up, Danny?
Thanks for having me on, John.
Dude, absolutely. You're listening to the Dangerous Man Podcast. Once again, Adam is on his business trip right now. He's down there in the Houston of Texas. So, bringing some guests on to hang with me today. Well, we are just having a conversation, Danny and I, that I think is worth picking up. We were basically just ranting about raising prices in business well, why don't you just tell us what you're saying?
So essentially, you fire your old clients, and this is only necessary if you need new clients, essentially. But generally in business, you start to tier up, so you do higher quality projects and whatnot. And from my experience, old clients don't want to pay the price of your higher tier, but they want your higher tier, essentially.
Right.
So you just let them know the price, and essentially they're like, I can't afford that. And so you stop doing work with them by just simply that. And so
That's essentially how you fire them?
Exactly. Because it's like, so I do video work, and, the bottom tier, I mean, you could do $200. I mean, I'm sure you could do even cheaper if you try it. But it just, like, maybe senior photos for $100 is like your bottom tier. But it's like when you start doing thousands and thousands of dollars per project, it's like, I should focus all my time on that and not the $200 projects. And so essentially you can fire your clients by just raising your prices, because it's like that project per se might still be maybe worth $200, although I would argue it's worth a lot more if you really calculate your time, your tools, and your travel and taxes and inflation. In the course of 2 years, it's probably worth $400, right? But people find it hard to pay more for the exact same thing, although they keep doing that with their groceries and gas. So, maybe they do, but
Going to Whole Foods.
Yeah. And so, but my thing is, one, you don't want to grow resentful towards your clients by undercharging, but it feels rude to like charge more or whatnot because they've been getting it for that. But essentially, I mean, you just got to be honest. Like, inflation's killing us, and X, Y, and Z, whatever. We're
looking to grow our business now.
Yeah, you let them know, and it's like
we're moving into bigger things.
Most people take it positively, and if they get mad at you, it's like, well, maybe they're not the best client. So,
right. I think like Alex Hermosi was talking about. Basically, he had a podcast episode where he was saying 80% of your customers will bankrupt you. And what they did was, there's this I guess there's this bigger portfolio company where they invest in companies and they help kind of grow companies, and so people will kind of partner with them to help them scale and get bigger. It's kind of what Alex is doing, pretty much essentially. But they're like, they do like 50 billion like a year. Like they're up there. They're one of the big players. And he was basically saying what they do is they'll take a business when they acquire them, and they'll immediately like do data analytics and basically be like, how much does every customer has every customer ever spent with them ever in the whole history of the company.
Whoa.
And they pull all that into all those spreadsheets, all that data into spreadsheet, and they essentially take the top 20% of customers that have spent the most with them. So if you sorted it by cost of how much has each customer essentially have you gotten from them, they only take the top 20% customers. And they essentially, one way they do that is they throw a survey out over time of all the customers that are not as much ones that have been customers, but people that are active customers with them. They'll throw surveys out. And these are thoughtful, strategic questions that they want that give them a lot of insight into how they're going to structure their business. They basically, what they're saying is a lot of our business has happened with these customers by accident. Like we kind of just existed and they stumbled upon us. But we want to take steps on making everything we do purposeful and intentional. Yeah. And so they basically would, I'm trying to think of some of the questions they would ask them, but, it was like, how much money do you, so say it was like a B2B, business to business. So your business sells to other businesses and helps serve other businesses. And it was like, how much is each of these businesses that you work with, how much do they make a year? What's their average client? What's their average customer? And in the case of Alex working with his old company, Gym Launch, they found like if there were customers that were making these people that were doing startup gyms, and Alex would help take startup gyms and help them grow. And these gym owners, if they were making if they had less than 30 clients, I think it was 30 people coming to the gym. And if it was money wise, if they were making less than 10 or 10K or more, essentially what I'm getting at is there were some themes coming back from the survey data and even just from their own analytics from customers and clients that have bought with them over the years. And they could see that actually we made the most money off of these types of overlapping themes, 30 customers or more, 10K or more a month, and certain types of stats. But where it gets interesting back to this into the story is taking the top 20%, right? And it was basically take all of the themes from the survey, all of the answers, and basically only keep the customers that had some kind of overlap with other customers. Same answers, similar answers. And what they would find was there were themes that there would be a specific kind of person, and they would see the theme over and over again with so many different clients. And what they realized is those were the ones actually really funding the company and really making them profitable was these specific types of people with these specific needs. And so it's I could offer 20 solutions to a customer. But then I have to have 20, or I could help 20 problems, or 20 different types of people. For instance, in your photography, it's I could do senior pictures, and I could do, I could work with small businesses helping do videos for their website page. I could also do weddings, and I could do, insert any type of video that you could get paid for, really is what I'm getting at. And all of a sudden it's well, then you have to be able to have the clientele to make those videos for varying different types of customers with different needs and different visions. And you need
They're
staff.
Very different.
They're very different.
Very different.
But what if all of your customers overlapped and were basically identical with their needs and with the type of content you made them? And so you could just make one single type of video, but spam it on repeat and just do that thing better than anyone else. The same efforts would multiply. You would have to, the same effort to basically service 10 people with a video would be the same as if you serviced 100 or 1,000. Maybe you get a couple more editors, but you can just kind of pump out a model of how you work because the need is always the same. The solution's always the same. And so that's basically what they did with these companies is the top 20% were basically the same types of things. And they also were the ones putting the most money out. So they're let's just take all of our effort and time, energy, resources, and pour into finding these types of people in the top 20% tier. But also these are the types of people that have money. So it's let's not waste time with these people that are the lower 80% will, this, the reason the headline is the 80% of your customers will bankrupt you. It's because, this is where you lean in and listen. Why, John? Why?
Why, John?
It's because, yeah, thank you. You have to ask me these questions.
Yeah.
The reason is because they will continue to nag you and be like, this isn't right. I need this, solve this problem. Oh,
Yeah.
or like you'll have so many different customer service requests from a million directions.
Yep.
And they're not even the ones paying you the most money.
Exactly.
So you now have to serve and scratch their butt and keep them happy. Whereas if you just raised your prices, changed all of your messaging. Oh yeah, this is the next part. This is what the solution was. They changed all of their messaging to that one top 20% customer type to serve that one person's needs, that one problem, all the things. They basically just shifted. I'm going to write directly to the top 20% and only talk about them and their needs. And all of a sudden you'd see so much that 80% fizzle away because all of a sudden it's not relevant to them anymore.
Yep.
But also that 20% magnetizes towards you and you get more of those types of people. And that's how they'd grow and scale these businesses.
Man, it's funny because it's so relatable. It's like a good example would be I quoted a friend for wedding photography for $2,500. And they're like, oh, it's so expensive. And, I'm like, okay, we'll give you, a friend's family discount for, it was like 10% off or 15% off, something like that, Yeah, it's funny because they're like, oh, well, we got to look around, and like see if we find something else that's better, essentially. I'm like, all right, do your due diligence. I already know, though, you're not getting anything as good as me for over $3,000. And I was like, man, maybe I should charge $3,000 because I know I can take good stuff too. But,
oh, yeah.
So it's like people are like super hesitant to purchase at that. But then I had a school project where it was just creating one video and the project was, I want to say almost $7,000 and they didn't care. Like,
you just drop the price and they're like, cool.
Yeah. They were like, we don't really care, how much it costs. It's more so they cared about like legal elements of like the contracts and stuff. They were more like hesitant about contracts than they were about the actual price. Like we initially were going to do, I think it was about $4,500 for a single day of production. Although rates have gone up now, but the,
we going after the 20%, baby.
They realized, they were gonna need a second day of production, and
yeah,
I was like, "Oh, all right, I'll send you the updated, proposal essentially to see if, that it would be within their budget or whatnot." They they even, like, second guess. They're like, "Oh, yeah, okay."
Yeah. Oh, we need a second day? How much? Great, let's do it.
Yeah,
what?
like,
I just charged you a whole nother day
send the
of
proposal.
production.
It's like, wow, geez, that was a lot of money. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but
that's what I'm talking about.
For like
abundance mindset, baby.
When it's the first time you've quoted something like that, you're like, wow, I can't believe someone's paying us that much money to do something,
Oh, yeah, I bet it's so exciting.
And so what's funny is because I did the math off of what my mentors have been teaching me, and I was like, man, I still undercharged. It should have been a 10K project minimum for like one day, but when you're shifting out of your mindset of being a freelancer to running a business, you have to look at other expenses and not just like, all right, if I have another gig, I could go another month. It's like it shifts into being like more of a
profit margin and things that
like,
actually help you do big things and grow
and survive and thrive and like function healthily and then not be like stressed 24/7 because you're cutting yourself short on every line. So, but yeah, I was just amazed that like the $2,500 project was so egregious and hard, and it's like I understand because I'm like it's a lot of money when you're getting married. It feels like a lot, but it's like for the quality of clients is definitely higher. on the higher end spectrum, and so to target that, and I mean, we that's a much better margin too as well. It's like you and it was only 2 days of work, and whereas, I mean, the wedding one will be 1 day of work, but I hired an editor to edit that as well, so but for 2 days of work, it was much better, so
Wow.
but yeah, that's the hope. So what you're saying though about like finding those people who specifically are, I think it's part of the niching down and not trying to do everything because initially that's what I was taught. So that's what I was doing. I'd shoot weddings, I'd shoot real estate, I'd shoot commercials, nonprofits, I'd shoot trying to think of any other options. There's a lot, just a lot of
Yeah.
different things you shoot. Weddings,
You
wedding
you were doing a lot of cool
photography,
stuff,
wedding
a lot of
videography,
variety.
travel videos. And it's I don't blame people because it's what's on YouTube and that's kind of what was taught. But essentially, it's the opposite advice. You pick one type of niche that you want to do. So my niche right now is schools, and I only target schools now. So
Oh, wow.
and the reason for that, like I'll take on a project from someone else, but essentially I I only target schools for my outreach. Like I'm not outreaching for
For, like,
weddings.
lead acquisition.
Yeah, I got rid of my wedding website actually, which hurt my heart, John, because you helped design literally
Yeah,
all of it. I want to say it hurt. It really
I
did.
know. It looks great.
It was fresh.
You kept the heart and soul of it for your new one, though.
Yeah,
So,
I kept the flow because I like the flow of it. It was still a good flow, but yeah, so I stopped targeting everyone else and because you were just so dependent upon any job that came in. But it was like it made no sense because for the real estate, it'd be like a $50 photo shoot. And you have to drive somewhere. Like, oh, it's only an hour of taking pictures. But like the amount of time to charge the batteries, pack the camera bag, load the car, drive half an hour to an hour out to a place,
wow.
shoot the property, and then
And on the back end,
head home, you know, upload the pictures to the site. The site never works. I'd end up having to use Google Drive anyways, and then wait till the drive upload is done to send it over. And it
yeah.
just was like, wow, what an investment
Oof,
for half a day's work, actually,
for 50
for
bucks.
50 bucks.
Oh
It's
my
like,
gosh.
and then it's
Yeah, no
you're
no
self-employed. So the taxes are
oh,
even higher
30, 40%.
on you. And now people be like, well, you can write off the mileage or whatever. Oh, well, I do plan on doing that.
It's like, we do that anyways,
But
whether we're
it's
getting paid
like,
50 bucks
but it's like, let's be honest, guys. This is a loss. Like big fat L. The only person who wins here is the realtor who paid $190, but he probably doesn't even value it because it's $190. So it's like,
Wow.
so the only way you could do it successfully is if you were shooting, you know, loads of properties. So you'd have to be driving to property, but that work is very rushed then. And I don't like rush work. Like I have
Yeah.
some urgency, but like I want to do my job well and like make it fresh and good and something worthy of it. And it's like the opposite. It's like we want that talent, but you have to do it as fast as possible because we're paying you so little to
That's actually a
do it.
fascinating concept because I know even when I was in school doing audio engineering, it was like, they're like, what makes a professional? They're like, you're really good and you're really fast. It's like, I would agree with that generally. But it's interesting because most places you get, it just gets super competitive. People get super fast and they're just loading in projects. They're loading as much work as they can. That's how they make more money is they just do more in
Do
less
more.
time.
Yep.
It's like I could do like a similar equivalent of work, but it would take me 32 hours in the studio. It would take my instructor 4 hours, But it's like, I don't think a lot of them realize too that what if I could might take a little bit more time and do this super well, niche down and only help certain types of musicians, but then charge a premium because there's no one better than me in that it's space.
Yeah.
Like this is literally, there's an audio engineer that I'm blanking on his name right now, but oh yeah, Chris Lord Allergy, CLA, big guy. He's mixed like Green Day and almost every like punk rock type thing you could think of, or even just rock. He's done it. And he's got like his sound, his vibe. You pay him to mix your song in his way, but you pay him a crap ton.
Yep.
And he does it at once, and then you have to pay a ton to have a redo.
Yep.
But it's like, you know what you're getting. You know what I mean?
Yep. First try, it's already
Oh,
like
yeah.
perfection.
The guy's got like gear he's got the external like compressors and equalizers, just which is basically fancy speak for very fancy, lovely tools and gear that we use in audio as engineers to shape sound, just like my voice is being shaped right now,
Exactly.
to make it sound smooth and awesome and great and whatever you would need. At
Sound
any rate, he
manly.
has certain compressors that are the knobs are glued in place.
Mhm.
He's like, if I want that sound and those effects, I don't walk over to the compressor and adjust the knobs.
Yeah.
It's like I just have a cable and I plug into my studio, to put it simply. And then that has literally like that's where the mic is coming from, is this cable. And I can plug this little patch cable into, there's like
That board.
100
Yeah.
different little mic inputs. It's called the patch bay. I could just plug in microphone number 3 into, however many patch bay, like 100 different inputs. And I literally a different piece of gear is in a different input. And then it automatically comes, I have to patch it back in.
Man.
But you can basically send a signal to and from like a piece of hardware.
Yep.
And so you just have like a wall
Patches.
of these compressors and EQs set. And then he just patches into the one he wants the sound for.
Man.
It's just like, I mean, obviously that's a lot of money, but it's also like he has a workflow,
Yep.
But anyways, this idea of I tangent a little bit, but it's an interesting story because that's kind of where I first learned about like you have to be fast. But I think it's interesting because do you think like we're gonna see an aspect of business where it's like you don't necessarily have to be fast, but you just have to be like, do really great work and have good strategy.
Yep.
And take on the right people.
Man, it reminded me of another friend I have who is a real estate photographer full time, and he was saying the first house he photographed it for $400. I was like, wow, that's double the starting price that the guys I had been with had started at. And what's funny is because he has now the best camera equipment. He does the highest quality properties, and he's on the like complete opposite spectrum of being on versus the lowest like tier and whatnot. He said it took him 2 months to break 6 figures, which I know a lot of guys want to hit 6 figures. It's the qualifier apparently.
The first monthly number.
Yeah, it's the first number that everyone thinks of. So
yeah,
but essentially by doing the highest end tier and whatnot, he can spend the same amount of time at a property, but make double or triple or quadruple, as well as then he has the freedom to buy the nicest tools, which will produce even better work. Although
that makes
it's
you
not
available to the right types of people, buyers. They're like, well, you have this gear, you produce these results.
Yeah.
Therefore, you're the guy.
And allowed him to solve the other problem, which is gas. He was making enough he could just buy a Tesla and just electricity. He said he was spending over $80 a day on gas. Then he bought a Tesla, and it's like $10 a day, I think he said, that he spends on electricity. Here, let me do some math.
Yeah,
If
that's
you're spending
crazy.
$80 a day on gas, in 31 days, that's almost $2,500, which is pretty much a payment for a Lamborghini Huracan on gas. So
he could lease a Lamborghini.
Yeah. So then that's about $300 to $400 on electricity he spends now on that. Not that I'm the most Tesla guy out there, but
it's a creative,
it's kind of remarkable
solution.
Now he did spend, a lot of money on the car, so but I'd rather spend the money on a car than gas. So
absolutely. Well, this has been a lovely intro.
Yes.
To
slightly longer intro.
No, I love it though because I'm just realizing like I love sharing topics I have on mind, but Peter, who was on the show earlier, which is actually Danny's brother, we're going to get into a bit of Danny and his backstory here. But we realized that it's nice to just kind of have a conversation. And it's like him and me are both the type of people. It's like, here's a topic. What's a story on the topic? And I'd be like, But it's like, start talking and then realize we have like 100 stories we could bring up in the moment. Like, he's really great at that. I'm really great at that. Put me in the spot and you know, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, play a song on the guitar for me, John. But then all of a sudden I'll just be in the background jamming and like I'm playing 50
It's a
different
good
things. And
time.
it's like,
Yeah.
it's just kind of that's how it works. But yeah. And obviously, Danny's a friend. This is not obvious to our listeners, but Danny's a great friend of mine. We grew up together. Out of high school, we also were roommates for a couple years, which was
Those are
great
some good
times.
years. Yeah.
I'm a huge audio guy. That's my cup of tea, you could
That's
say.
why the podcast sounds so good.
Thank you, but it's true. It's because I have a couple skills.
Yeah.
And Danny is a huge video guy. And so naturally, we've only gotten better friends as we've gotten older because
They
we're
link
both.
so well together.
Oh, yeah. We're just both gear nerds, too.
100%.
Proud
But
of it.
the
Love it.
video didn't work out this night for our podcast though. So
Oh,
yeah.
you know, once we start doing video for this, you're going to help us build a system out.
It'll be good. Although we're gonna have to have someone like do live switching because otherwise it's gonna be hours and hours to.
Yeah. At that point, we'll have a studio and,
Yeah.
it'll be
100%.
it'll be all great.
It's coming though.
And this is actually like one thing that Danny's one of the original guys that got me inspired for the podcast. It was like the early steps. It was like there has to be something that leads to the other thing, to the other thing. This is not like what came first, the chicken or the egg. Maybe it was actually, but it's like Danny is essentially like really wants to get the message out of hope, get the message out of growing and becoming a better man. And I'd love for you just to kind of tell a bit of your story, even going back to high school. Some of our listeners have heard our Nights of the Immaculata and
Oh yeah, that
some
was
of your
good too.
your travel excursion escape plans, if you know what I'm trying to
yeah.
say through that, and kind of through where the transformation happened to over time. A little bit of your story with that, and you guys can listen and kind of see how this really has contributed into impacting me and my story too, and kind of the heart we have for wanting to grow and share that with people. So, yeah.
Man, where to start? I think growing up maybe and like so me and John we grew up we're probably 2 miles away from where our families lived. Although initially it was like a mile and a half that my family moved again. But I grew up in the big community that we have here, which is Community Christ the Redeemer. And there's a lot of families in general that we're linked up through, but same youth group.
This is associated through our church.
Yeah, same through a church as well. And then yeah, I would say that was probably the main base. But I remember when I was a young child, there was this girl that I really liked. I almost don't want to say her name just for the sake of it.
Yeah, probably keep it
But essentially, I liked her a lot. And, email was the big thing back then. So I sent her an email, I was like, do you like me? And I got a reply, I like you. Do you like me?
Ooh, nice and direct. I love it.
This went on for like a month where it was like, wow, we're going to get married. We're going to have 10 kids. This could be great. I was planning on electrical engineering. I was like, I'm going to be an electrical engineer. We're going to get married. This could be great. And at the end of the month, it was like, I don't like you anymore. It's like, no.
That's what she said to you?
Yeah. She didn't like me back. And
crushing your soul.
My whole world exploded. I was like, I'm going to run away. This is good logic, There's a book. It's called My Side of the Mountain. It's a great book. Every kid should read it. Every boy, I think, should read it because it's just a great book. But essentially, the book, this boy runs away from the city to go live in the mountains and live off the wild, essentially. And he does it. He runs away. He lives off the mountain. He gets a peregrine falcon. He tames, help catch rabbits and whatnot. Learns to set traps to catch small game. and he built a home inside of a tree and lived out of it. I have a big imagination, so I took this book as like literal, as like this is totally possible.
Right.
And so this was my dream. I was like, man, so on my birthday list, I put things that I would need to run away. And I actually got some.
Wow.
It was a pup tent. I need a pup tent. Because how else was I gonna like, you know, be in the wilderness for, a while. I was like, I had my bike. I was planning on riding my bike there. I wanted to go to the redwood tree forest because those were the biggest trees that you could probably build a home out of. Although I
Dang.
had
That's in
zero,
California, right?
yeah, yeah, in California,
Wow.
had zero physical to actually make that happen. But the imagination overlooks some things sometimes when you're 13, 14, 15. So,
Right.
and then I wanted a camouflage tarp so I could hide in the forest as I was biking there so people couldn't see my tent. It would be camouflaged. At least that was the thought.
Smart.
Oh, I forgot that like half of,
Gotta be
the
prepared for
route there
everything.
is like desert and it's not actually, forest and whatnot. So, and then,
That'd make the bike ride a little interesting.
yeah, oh man, throw sand on it. Maybe that would help. But essentially, I didn't get a chance to run away. I think it was the 16th birthday or 15 or 16,
Probably 16.
somewhere in there. Because I had been planning my runaway for a while, and I didn't get a runaway. So a group of guys had started this group called Knights of the Immaculata. Intro to Mr. John Kostohris over here.
Yes.
And we'd wake up early, go to adoration, go for daily mass. We go for a jog
At church, essentially.
at church. And man, it was one of the best summers of my life. I grew a lot that summer. I had started swimming in high school as well, so I started to get some like physical shape, so I wasn't such a like weakling.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still tiny compared to a lot of guys. I'm like, I gotta work. I got some work at the gym. But that summer, I would
You
say
know that's
really
right.
really changed my life in a lot of ways, and so it was kind of cool because it was spiritual formation first. I think I would say with some physical, but essentially spiritual formation, which I think is probably the most important because essentially nothing works unless you have moral people. So, like, if
Mm,
people aren't honest, if people aren't selfless, if people aren't, it's very hard to make anything else grow if you don't have that first. And so that's why I think it's the most important. But I want to say, so I did mission work with Net Ministries when I was 18. And then when I got off the road and it was back to college to, go get a job, and I have to say, it was one of the most depressing transitions of my life was going from doing retreats all over the country. We went to 30 to 33 different states, um,
dang.
to having people like, global warming's gonna kill us all.
Right.
It was a serious like decline in doing cool things and whatnot. And then also I'd forgot all the math from my previous college days before I went on net. And so I was like, well, do I really want to redo some math classes to be an electrical engineer? And I was like, no, I hate college. I love learning, but I hated college. I really felt like it was not a place to learn, but to be brainwashed and programmed into their cult. Anyways, I have some
Heard
strong
that.
feelings on college.
Oh, you came to the right place.
Yeah. If you're a parent listening, don't send your kids to college. If you want them to lose any faith left, send them to college. That's probably the best place to send them. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, in that regard, I want to say I was living with John while I was going to college still. That was actually a great time living with John still. Having good support and whatnot and solid brother is always good. And I want to say, let's see here.
I want to quickly, before
Yeah,
you
yeah.
move on, I want to go back to what you're saying with Knights of the Immaculata. You were obviously talking about running away, and then you mentioned getting involved in this group. But uh, what what's the story with running away there?
Like, well, one, not feeling like I belonged anywhere. I grew up in a big family, 10 kids. I'm number four. I'm in the middle. And, the parents, it's not their fault. It's just the reality. You have 10 kids, you can't give them all loads of quality time.
Right.
It's just not it doesn't work like that. And some people decide to have smaller families because of that reason. All I would say the kid will understand when they grow up. It's just you do. It's like I
Yeah.
understand, and so
There's other benefits too.
I try now and spend, some quality time with my parents intentionally and whatnot. I also figured out too, there was nothing stopping me from going into their room and saying hi. Like,
Right.
it's kind of like that entitlement. You're like, if they didn't reach out to me, it's, so one
Yeah.
just being initiating, and I realized I was not an initiator whatsoever. So in that regard, but remind me again where.
Yeah. This running away story and
Oh
how that
yeah.
resolved and how
So essentially, it was like
I'm assuming you
middle
did
child,
not run away.
not feeling like I got any attention, even though I didn't reach out for attention. And then yeah, the girl of my dreams didn't like me back, so being a single legend was a much more desirable path to pursue,
Yeah.
and maybe meet Cinderella somewhere out there. I don't know what I was thinking.
In the redwood forest.
Exactly. She ran away as well, so it's probably not good wife material if she ran away. But the Nice Immaculata gave me a lot of purpose of things that I could focus on, which was I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Mm.
And actually, through this, I could be something that's better or and whatnot. I feel like too is like a lot of spiritual wound with like not being like back, even though it sounds really cliche and stupid,
Right.
which it is. It's stupid, but it's like I don't know. When you're a kid, it's real. Everything is so real to you, and so praise God, we grow up and we can realize that some things aren't as important as we thought it was. But essentially, having that group, I would say, gave just a lot of purpose of what I could focus on and what I could do and use my talents and energy for, and
Yeah.
in that regard. So, and we made lots of good memories too. So,
Yeah. I remember me and my buddy who started at Max, we had a lot of vision of just like, oh, what if we got a bunch of guys going for runs and praying together and working out and doing the poker nights and all that. And it's just really it's cool hearing. It's not just cool. It's like it shook me when Dan first told me this. It was like, oh yeah, I was gonna run away, and then you guys invited me. The timing was like you were like planning
yeah.
within the month or something. It was like it was ridiculous. I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember that.
No, it's
If
like
that was
May hit and it was like we started it up because all the snow melted finally, which was when I was planning on it because I didn't want to go in the winter because it's
bicycle again.
Minnesota, baby. It's freezing and ice. You don't
Yeah.
bike in the winter. So it,
Wow.
it was some good timing though. I just say it was,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. What about an aspect of like having brotherhood, other men in your life that you get to brotherhood is obviously a term that maybe some would be more familiar with in like church land, but maybe people outside of that a bit more. I guess the way we describe it is just like having good fraternity with other men, having good fellowship, having good,
yeah.
good deep friendships that are men that have your back. And what are some qualities of other men and kind of brotherhood? Maybe things that you saw at the time in Knights Immaculata or things since then. Why is that important to you?
I think um it kind of reminded me of the Hard Times, Great Strong Men book that we love.
Oh, we love
Just
that book.
because
It's good shit.
there, yeah, if you're a guy, I recommend reading it. Women, give it to your men. That's generally how I say it. You will be offended if you read it.
If you're a woman.
You will. You
Yeah.
just it's not for you. It's for the men. And um, a lot of ways it talked about how men are required to be honest because it would threaten the safety of the tribe if he was dishonest. And I think too, it's like you're required to be loyal to each other in a lot of ways because again it would threaten your tribe's survival essentially. And so in a lot of ways
Hmm.
we kind of lost a lot of these elements because times have been so good especially in the US, it's like it's so good that weakness just seeps in because you can afford to have the slack, or so you think. And when it gets too comfy, though, it brings on weak men, and the weak men bring on hard times again, and the hard times bring back the good men. And so I think a lot of ways it correlated back to the nights in the sense of what we were working on at the time, even though we didn't really know it, was like developing lifelong friendships with each other and forming those
Right.
bonds at a much younger age. Cause it's like, let me tell you, like me and John could go a year without talking to each other. And then when we talk to each other again, we understand each other perfectly. There's no like, oh
Right.
man, like, is he going to feel bad that I didn't reach out to him? Or like with other friendships, that's how I feel. Like if I haven't talked to them in a while, um, like eh,
Yes.
it's like taken personally that you didn't reach out, but they didn't reach out either. That's the whole funny part. It's like
Mm.
neither of us did. And so what? Everyone's living their own life. It's not like you should take it personally. But that tension always seems to show up.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
It's so relatable.
Yeah. And
Yeah, it really is.
so with John though, because of that, like we didn't talk for a year, I want to say when you were in Colorado.
Yeah.
Yeah, we it was probably a year, but I just remember when he got back, it was like I could talk to him as if not a day had gone by. And I was like, man, I don't have that anywhere else.
Yeah.
Anywhere else. I like
So true.
seriously, I didn't feel bad about not
Mm.
talking, and I didn't feel like ashamed for not talking. And you weren't like shaming me like, "Oh, bro, why didn't you like talk
Right.
to me?" It's just like you just it's a perfect I don't know how else to describe it.
There's this level of understanding where, I mean, part of it's just like you have such similar foundations growing up, similar experiences, and a lot of life experiences together growing up. But then it's, I don't know, that's part of what I've realized goes into those types of friendships. But
Yeah.
some of it too is just like, it wasn't like Danny was friends with me because I did certain things that it made his life better, or even like, that's a little vague. A better way to put it would be like, if I if Danny's getting something out of me as a friend, like he only is friends with me because I, supply him with Cheetos.
Yeah.
That's obviously a shallow example. We could apply this to anything. It's like the moment that all of a sudden, oh, I don't sell Cheetos anymore. And all of a sudden the friendship dissolved because it was just our common interest of
Yep.
Cheetos and like what I could do for Danny, what he could do for me, like buying from me. And there wasn't any of that. It was just like, it was, we were friends for the sake of each other, not, there wasn't any one thing that's like, oh, sorry, we don't have that in common anymore. Like we're
Yeah.
not friends. It's like, it's hard to describe,
Yeah.
but that's kind of maybe a little bit of how I've thought about it.
It reminded me of that book you gave me and Rachel, The Men, Women, and the Mystery of Love.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
Edward Street book.
yeah, I think he breaks it down like phenomenal. Like the experience, at least between two guys, it's different, obviously. But
Yeah.
that regard, it was like I think it tied perfectly because it's like I got out of college and I started working, and I realized when I started working, I didn't relate as much with I was in SPO at the time, St. Paul's Outreach. They do outreach to college students, and what was I gonna say? It's hard to relate with college students when you're just working.
When you're not in school.
Yeah, it's like they're like, "Oh, let's hang out and let's do all this stuff." I'm like, "Bro, I gotta work. I gotta I ain't staying up late. I gotta be up and go to work and make money.
Yeah.
Got bills." And you know, love the college days. Well, not as much, but
Not the actual school part.
not the school part. And I remember I at the time too had started dating my now wife, and I was working for Ziegler Cat as a heavy technician shop helper. So I would help them with big engines and that type of stuff. But anyways, they required hearing protection at the shop, and so I put on these big headphones and I would put Bluetooth buds in, and I would listen to audiobooks all day
This is where the story gets really good.
because I was like, dude, I can listen well, I was like, they're gonna pay me to learn. And when I say learn, I learned more in 1 year there than I've ever in my entire life simply by listening to audiobooks. And
Jeez.
I had, I had started getting to doing photography and video after well, during college, but after college. And
Yeah.
I YouTubers became a really big thing. It was like, wow, like Peter McKinnon was like the main influence, you know. But it was like they would travel, do all these cool videos. It didn't look like the coolest thing because they make it look cool. um, and
Talented cinematographers.
yeah, and so I was like, man, I should learn and tap into that. And so I had started the process of learning that. But those books that I was reading, I I think one sort of born the vision for needing strong men again came out of that. And
Mm,
that Hard Times, Great Strong Men book really hit the nail on the coffin, I think they say.
indeed, they do.
Because it was like, wow, like society's collapsing around us. And I have to say, 2020 was probably one of the biggest awakenings ever that I've ever seen of like realizing just how fragile everything is. And now that I have a wife, I got a baby. It's like me by myself is not actually like that good of a like
Mm,
um, safety net. Like, you know, I aspire to be a great provider, protector, lover. It's like, but the
yeah.
reality is like just one guy by himself is pretty easily capped. I mean, they could hit you with a drone at this point if they wanted it. And just say it was a gas leak, and no one would, you know.
That's what they do in
Uh,
the movies.
yeah, so I was like, wow, this is terrible. And so
Yeah.
the kind of the realization I came to was the only way to reverse it is to be you have to become the counterculture in the sense of one, we need other strong men. It's not just like me. It's like we need lots of them. And
Mm,
you know, it's like the women were like upset with the quality of men. That was the thing I was hearing. Men are so weak and men are unmarriageable and whatnot. And you know, I saw also that a lot of the women are unmarriageable as well. I was like,
real facts.
and like you can question it very well without getting people triggered. And it's like, like
Right,
it's
if the
so
women are just like,
obvious. It's
"Man, we
like,
want you to be better, like, be more manly." Everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, I can understand that." And
yeah,
you're like, "Man, the women, they need to grow up." Everyone's like,
yeah,
"How dare you?"
yeah. It's like essentially what I was seeing was the women were taking on all of the masculine energy, and
Mm,
it's not good. And it's not good because
what do you mean by masculine energy
as in like
in that
they
example?
have to provide, they have to protect.
Yeah.
And like you see women in the workforce, you know, and they're out there protesting to work, you know, and it's like, I mean, go ahead and protest to work. You already can, but I mean, you know, but essentially it was like the I think the feminist movement did so much damage that they maybe didn't intend, but although I think a lot of things are actually intentional weapons against society to collapse them. And so, you know, that's for another time. But
Yeah, that's another, juice
that's another
box.
juice box. But essentially, it was like, all right, so the men were struggling very clearly in the West. It's we're stuck in porn, we're stuck in video games, we have zero ambition. We call people greedy for being ambitious, which makes no sense because you can't afford to live currently. So how is that greedy if you're just trying to
Wow.
pay your bills? And then I just saw it was shamed. We want these strong men, but the men were attacked. And so it's like people are like, why don't we have any great leaders anymore? I just look at the last elections. I mean, they completely destroy anyone that would be a strong man. It's too offensive now. And so it's like, well, how do we blame all the men for our problems when they're attacked for being a strong man? And so it's like,
Right.
and it's not necessarily easy to take on that burden, but I think it's necessary at this point to survive. It's like, well, if you don't see the leadership that you desire, you have to become it. And it's hard
Mm,
because it's like, I'm
mm,
not that yet, you know? And, but that's the thing is you don't
yeah.
start like that. You know, you it's developed. It's like you know, the mentality of like, oh, people are born with discipline or these other traits that are not traits at all. They're formed and everyone can form them. And I think that's the biggest lie that I see is like we just think some people are disciplined.
Mm.
Dude, like it's developed. You have to develop it. It's like guys
Wow.
that have lots of muscle. I mean, some use steroids, but it's developed. It's not, and then you see guys that are super overweight. It's developed. It's like they're like, "Oh,
That's a
but
great
but
point.
people have eating disorders." Clearly it's disordered. Clearly their eating is disordered. Just because something's disordered doesn't mean you have zero control
Yeah.
over it. And so it was like, when I was younger, I struggled a lot with pornography. I could just be like, "Oh, I was born a loser who views porn," you know?
Take the whole,
But it was
victim.
developed. It's like and it can be
Mm,
changed. And so I think that's something that I was seeing a lot was a lot of these things in general. We were convinced that you're either born with it or you weren't. Some people were born rich, some people are born poor. You know,
mm,
yeah, people are born rich and people are born poor. But if you look at the stats, that doesn't determine the outcome. It's like 99% of the people that are rich started from being poor, and it's like, and actually it's like considered are we going past our time? No, it's like considered, a negative actually to be born into great wealth because it's generally a lot of softness comes with it. Everything's taken care of. You never worried about where your next food was coming from and whatnot. And that softness and that
mm.
weakness essentially you
Good
lose it all.
times.
You learn to spend and you don't learn to produce. And it's just a result of it. And so it was like, man, like we really do need strong men though. And I'm not there yet, but I was like, I'm sure as heck I'm gonna be working on it. And it's like, it's kind of like
Yeah.
it's like laughable, at first when you're like, oh, like I want to be strong, I want to be a good provider, I want to make lots of money, I want to do all these things. And it's like, oh, well then why aren't you there? It's like, well, anything that is good or worth doing generally takes time to develop. It's not like
Yeah.
you know, now if I'm 40 and I'm still at the same spot, now you got something to tell me because, 15 years have passed. So, so, in that regard, I don't want to act like it's not, but essentially it was like, I think the best way to narrow it down was it came down to ownership of you have to own everything. And Andy Frisella, I think, really did a good job explaining this of like, where or maybe it was Grant Cardone, I don't know. They both
I'm sure they
have
both
said
have said
like,
it.
I think it was Grant with this example, but he was
Yeah.
like, when you go in the bathroom and there's toilet paper on the floor, you just pass by it. But he's like, but if you take ownership and like whatnot, you have to take control of the situation, which is I'm gonna pick it up and throw it away. Andy Frisella was his thing was with the cars that he
Mm.
drives. He's like, he cleans them every day. And he's like, I believe it's in everything you have to do, and that's how you it's like when you see someone who's very wealthy, they work a lot, and they're like, "Why do they work so much? They have so much money. They don't need to work." Well, it's the working a lot that got them there.
Right.
As one of the factors, and then you see people that are, like, super lazy with video games and weed and whatever, and they're
Yeah.
not and they're not rich. It's like, well, are we really surprised that, these behaviors are whatnot? And so
Are linked.
yeah, and it's like I saw like hard work was attacked as like you don't care about your family or these other things that just were like they're necessary. It's like we've gotten so soft where we just view everything as like you can just like not do it. Even if it means that your family loses the
Mm.
house. It's like, oh well, at least dad was home.
And we got to be with the kids.
Yeah, it was like, and that's the thing. It's not that the dads shouldn't be present ever with his kids because that's the thing is a lot of guys when they're home they're not even present, so they're drinking beer, watching TV
Right.
or
They're just
games.
doing their thing,
Yeah,
not actually connecting with people.
and so I think just seeing a lot of that it was like, wow, like life isn't as, forgiving as I thought it would be. And then as well as seeing the problems in our country and the complete collapse of government, it was like, oh, we are so screwed if we don't like if we don't start reversing the trend. And I think a lot of it too came to where like it's not complicated. It's if all the people in your country are great, your country's great. If all the people in your country are trash, your country's trash. And so the way to reverse it
Whoa.
is it, we're all looking for that savior, we're like, oh, who's gonna save the country? Dude,
Right, like the government's just gonna
it's like,
be the person that fixes everything for you.
yeah, it's
Not
like,
one politician you elect in
yeah,
is
it's
gonna
like,
change it all
it,
and
it,
make your life great.
it's like if, let's say we had some great politician come in and start changing things, which is great. I think that's good. If you're still a fat piece of crap, you're still a fat piece of crap.
Dude.
If you're lazy, if you're all these other things, it's like, what changed? Nothing changed. It's like your
Mm,
regard. And so I think, because I'm like, there is merit to the critique that has been earned by men being weak and lazy in those regards. But I also think a lot of those things are intentional weapons to weaken the men of a society to collapse it. Because ultimately, bombing a country, you destroy the country. And so
mm.
that seems like a pretty poor way to infiltrate someone. And so what you do is you subvert the culture and you weaken the men essentially. And that's what they're doing. It's through pornography, through video games, and through these things, and killing any motivation, any purpose, or any desire to do something great. It's you know, and so I think ultimately too, it spreads like a cancer because it's like you know, people who quit on their dreams and their things, they're those haters, man. Like the negative people
They're the
online.
haters. They're
Like
the ones that quit.
bro, I posted a comment and this bot. It's clearly a bot. It's got one follower and follows one person. No picture, no nothing. But it's essentially he sends me a DM where he's like you weak. He's explicitive. He's like, reply to my comment again. I'll put a 20K hit out on your head or something like that with your IP
Jeez.
address. And I was just like, man, like,
What the fuck?
yeah, seriously, it was like, one, I laughed because I was like, one, I already know, bro, you don't got 20K. If you did, you would be showing it through your profile, but you're not. You don't even have a profile picture, so I can't tell if you're weak or not. But also, why would you put a 20K hit out on a dad with a kid and like a wife because he disagreed with you? I mean, maybe. I mean, but
Stranger things have happened, but
but essentially,
it's
it's
probably
like
very unlikely
I have an idea of like
statistically.
you of like the people that gave up on their dreams and whatnot, and they're just trying to like
Yeah.
make their reality your reality as well. And I hate to break it to you, I want nothing to do with that reality. I want my daughter to look up to me as someone who's someone worthy of looking up to. And it's like I don't want to die and people are like, wow, he was great company, but he didn't do anything with his life. He didn't, and I don't know how much it matters, then you're gone. But all I could say is like, you know, you do matter and you're worth fighting for. And, you don't start out great. And I think people admire it more when you start out at a crappy place, and I was that guy.
Mm.
I gaming and porn and no responsibility. And I think, it's the cross ultimately of, what's the solution? Pick up your cross and bear it and walk up the hill. It's like, why you die up there? Exactly. It's like the salvation comes from that. And so I think, I'm Catholic, so, I'm always going to lean into it. But,
Mm. Come on.
but I really think that, man, it hits it. It's like, and you suffer either way. I think you had shared this quote actually. It was like either way you suffer. It's like you're miserable one way, but the other way, it's like you choose intentionally to suffer rather than just being stuck in suffering for your
One of
poor
them
choices.
is suffer because you choose discipline, a life of discipline and purpose. And so there's suffering in that. Or suffer because long term you amount to nothing
Yeah.
and you become a nobody and you stay a nobody, which essentially by nobody, I mean you you didn't go after anything great. You didn't achieve anything that you're proud of. No one looks at you as somebody admirable that changed their life and inspired them to be better. You just kind of numbed yourself
To the
through
pain.
to the pain, which ended up causing
More pain.
more pain, but also just different pain. So it's kind of like look at your life and choose the pain that you want.
Yeah.
Choose the road that you want to follow. And this is kind of my final thoughts here to kind of conclude with
Yeah.
us is,
I like to talk.
no, I love it, dude. We got you. We got some good thoughts here. And just to kind of bring it home, it's like choose the path that you want to walk. I think we have to take ownership either way. One of them, we're taking ownership with purpose, with integrity, with, some kind of moral value. We obviously we do that so that we can have a more rich life,
Mm.
a more, but also to be able to serve others. And through that, actually experience giving something to someone, like, you know, bring an extra energy drink with you somewhere and give it to your bud. But you packed it because you thought of him and you wanted to give it to him.
Yeah.
And then give it to him and watch him light up and be excited that you gave him something, you thought of him. Maybe they don't like energy drinks. Maybe think of something better for them. But if,
Yeah.
in this scenario,
Yeah.
and watch how life changes when, or I guess my thought with that was when you give, how much joy are you getting back? How much fullness are you getting from, as you give, it just reciprocates back and it just, that friendship just gets better both ways. And that's one path we can choose. And the other is one of just, the suffering and pain of that comes through loneliness, that comes through depression, comes through being a slave to our passions, which essentially just means
You feel hopeless too.
yeah, the things that we want, like eating and pornography and anything that can be kind of compulsive and we're a victim to it. It rules over us because we don't have the self-discipline, the self-leadership to say otherwise.
It leads to that despair too, where you're like, oh, I'm on tomorrow. I'll never be out of this. I think that's a sad place to be.
That's that's the darkest of it.
Yeah.
I've been there.
Yeah.
That's the
Same.
depth of depression
Yeah.
is
I think
it
part
will
of it.
never be different.
Yeah.
You can't visualize it ever being better. And my message to anybody who's been there or has a friend or family member who's there, or if you're listening and you relate to that, my encouragement and my call is that one, you have to live in the truth. So call it what it is. Don't bullshit it. You're choosing to own and live there. Maybe initially it wasn't your fault to get there, but it's your choice what step you take next. And that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
It's your choice to stay there.
Or it's it's your choice to stay there. It's your choice to move. And what the pains only actually just are worth it in the long run, whereas the pains of staying there aren't worth it in the long
Yeah.
run. So, but stay hungry, guys, and stay fighters and lovers. And I'm reading my whiteboard right now because Danny wrote a bunch of stuff on it. He's like a Scotch library and or a Scotch collection of delicious liquors, liqueurs. And yeah, if this episode touched you, if it was impactful, if the message you think somebody for our listeners that you think this would be helpful for them to hear, I just want to invite you to share it with them. Just a quick swipe of the thumb and sending a quick text message, copy that link. I know that's made the difference for me sometimes when a friend sends me that, just what I needed to hear. So if you know someone who's there, we just invite you to share that. But Danny, thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
It's such a joy.
It was a good time.
Like if there's any place where we can just come and talk, like it's on a podcast where we're talking. That's the point of it.
It's good. I'm glad too. It's recorded it was just like I could go back and listen to it. I'm most excited about re-listening to it.
Oh yeah, it's so good.
Help clarify your own thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So
we'll have them back, and for everybody back home, you've been listening to the Dangerous Man podcast. We drop episodes every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and join us next time. Until then, stay dangerous.